in the chat. So if you put your name, the company you're with, and then one mindset challenge you're facing with your sales team right now. It could be lack of confidence, could be fear of rejection. They can't have tough conversations with C-suite, but put something in the chat that you want to learn about today, and we'll try to address it throughout the webinar. And as you can see, we're going to be very interactive throughout this. So we'll ask a ton of questions, we'll have polls, and we want this to be about you, not about us. So don't be shy and ask as much as you can. Why you should stay. I know it's Friday afternoon. A lot of people probably had a busy week trying to get to the weekend, but here's why you should stay for today's webinars. First off, you're going to hear from Brian Burns. He's one of the OGs in the sales world. If you haven't seen him before, he does the walk and talk videos. He's very famous on LinkedIn for telling the brutal truth and has a top 5 sales podcast called The Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling. A lot of us here at Brevity, including myself, have learned a ton from him, and he's a great mentor, ton of wisdom, and he's going to talk a lot about mindset today and culture and sales and what that really means. Number 2 is that we have a featured speaker every month. This month we have Alex Chrisman. He is the director of sales enablement at Bill Trust, and he's going to give his perspective. So direct from your peer, what they're facing day to day. So looking forward to have Alex speak. And then last but not least is that our CEO, Kelvin, just launched a brand new book that you may have heard about. It is called the Sales Trap Prevention Playbook. And that just went live on Amazon over the past week. It's really your one-stop shop, one source of truth of how to prevent your deals from stalling. So if you're going to read a sales book, this is definitely the one to read. And we're going to do a special giveaway to about 10 folks that sign up and register. But Kelvin, if you don't mind, if you could give a quick overview about that book, what it means to you, and talk a little bit about that, and I'll get the slides rolling.
Absolutely. So a lot of people believe that practice makes perfect. At Brevity, we believe there's a missing adjective, and that's really around perfect practice makes perfect. What you get out of this book is the ability to diagnose and prescribe what's the right conversation drill or curriculum that can help your team prevent deals from shrinking, stalling, dying on the vine with great precision. So super excited about this, and I think it'll be a great way for you all to end the quarter, end the year strong.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Kelvin. And we're going to have a little bit more, so stay on until at least till the middle, until the end. And we're going to put a link in there and explain how you can get access to that free book from Kelvin. So appreciate that, Kelvin. And then these webinars, just if you haven't been joined us before, it's all about you as sales leaders, as sales reps, where your deals are getting stuck, some actionable ways to improve. A lot of times we have a lot of interaction and featured guests such as Alex. So every month we have a different theme. This month is all about how to build a high performance sales culture. So why mindset is greater than knowledge, and why that performance mindset is the key to hitting your quota, how to keep things simple with accountability, especially with your closed loss report and some of the pattern recognition there. And then getting off the sales roller coaster. How do you navigate the highs and lows of the sales roller coaster? We're going to talk a lot about that today. So to get you guys engaged out of the gates here, we have a quick Zoom poll that Brad is going to put up. Go ahead and do that poll, Brad. It's going to be, what is your top challenge you're facing building a better sales team culture? A, not enough training tools. B, team resists change, so they're not very open to change. C is too much focus on product info, a lot of technical knowledge, but not as much sales process. And then 4, probably my favorite, my team acts like they know it all already. All right, we got the results coming in. Looks like too much focus on product info is going to be the winner. Actually, quite a bit, over 50%. I wouldn't have expected that. I thought it might be some of the other ones. Not enough training tools coming in at number 2. Team resisting change, number 3, and I guess there's not as many know-it-alls out there apparently as I thought. So awesome. Well, we're gonna have a couple more of these throughout this. We want to answer your questions. Again, put stuff into the chat if you don't hear us speak to it, and we'll try to get to it. But right now, I want to hand it off to Brian. And Brian, we talk a lot about the culture side of it and what is a performance mindset. I know you've had a lot of experience and a lot of focus on this over the past few years, but I wanted you to share, I guess, first off, what does a performance mindset mean and how does that relate to the sales cultures out there?
Yeah. And the survey said it basically, where people focus on product knowledge, the intellect of sales. I read a book, I go to a course, I go to a webinar, I listen to a podcast. I now know it. All set. Thank you. But that knowledge is just the start. That's the intellect. But then when we're in a sales situation, are we really thinking or are we reacting? We're going to revert to our instincts. And before this, Alex was kind of giving me a little case study, and we always revert to it, and especially when our income is at stake, which is essentially our life in a lot of cases. So sales is a performance profession. We've been diminishing that over the last 20 years, focusing it as an activity, meaning if we do a number of things, we get a number of outcomes. Well, that diminishes very quickly. And if that was true, then we wouldn't need great salespeople. And the busiest person would be the most successful. And that's not true. In what sport or other performance career does activity work? If you want to be a golfer or a football player or a basketball player, how long does it take to learn how to play golf? Half hour? It takes the rest of your life to become mediocre. The same is true with sales. But we don't want to think about that because if we think about it, then we have to do something about it. And as sales leaders, it's our job to do something about it.
And Brian, what are some examples of performance professions? I always try to relate it back
Sure.
to sales.
Well,
There's quite a, sports I think are one of the obvious ones, but there's also some other ones too that are out there.
there's a lot. Everything like cooking, right? Cooking's a great example because if you go into a bookstore, the number one category is cooking next to dieting. So it's like if you learn how to cook, then you got to learn how to diet. And like same thing with dieting. Really, does anybody not know what the secret is? It's eat less, move more. But nobody wants to do that, so they have to buy a book. Comedy is a great one, right? Because Jerry Seinfeld's probably written a book or two. We can all watch Seinfeld, write down the jokes, and when we tell them to our friends, how do they go? Not so good, right? How often have you been at a
You have pretty
party?
good jokes. You have pretty good jokes, Brian.
Well, that's another case. How many people are on LinkedIn trying to do a walk and talk? They think it's about walking and talking. It's not about walking and talking. It's about what you say when you walk and talk and how well you say it, how well you communicate it. And it took me years to get it so I could do it in a way that people would connect with it. So, pretty much a lot of things are performance. The problem is, we go to school for 12 years, and how many of our classes are about performance? They're about memorizing and regurgitating. But then the first time we do a performance, let's say it's sports or debating or doing a play, if it doesn't go well, what happens? Do we own it? Can we separate the performance from the performer? Do we blame our coach? My cross country coach had this saying, Brian, the clock doesn't have feelings. Meaning that if I didn't make a time, I wasn't running varsity. And as a freshman, I thought he hated me. And I go, why aren't you letting me run varsity? And he showed me the stopwatch because you're not fast enough. I had to hit that time. And I could blame him, but did that make me feel better? It did. It made me feel better, but that was emotional commission. And this is what we do in sales. When it doesn't go well, we rationalize how we did everything perfectly. But it's not about perfection. It's about a performance. How well did you connect with that other person? How well did you elicit what they care and want and need? How well did you vet out what they are up against? and help them through that journey instead of just reacting to their questions. Product knowledge. And a lot of people think sales is all about product knowledge. That's the service clerk mindset. If I answer all the questions right, I get the order. How many times have you answered all the questions right and you get ghosted? That's the difference between a performance and just an activity.
And a lot of times too, you only get one shot, right? It's you have these bigger deals you're
You
working
call
on.
somebody, can I have another shot?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You know, you think of like football season's about to start, college football, but you get one chance to get to that playoff game. And once you get to that playoff game, if you lose, you got to wait at least another year, maybe get another, never have another chance to even get to that position. So if you're working on these bigger deals, more complex, I mean, most likely that contract's going to be multi-year, so you're not going to have another shot for a long time. So it makes sense to really treat it like a performance, what you're talking about. Um, Appreciate that, Brian. And we have some questions probably coming in throughout the chat. We'll try to address those. But let's transition to our featured speaker in addition to Brian, Alex Chrisman. So I'll pull up a slide for him here in a second. But enough of us talking. We like to get your peers in front of you. And Alex is the director of sales enablement at BillTrust. They do a lot of stuff trying to simplify your order to cash process and accounts receivable. He's going to share a little bit about his story, his sales philosophy, mindset, culture, limiting beliefs, and being accountable as a leader. And I want to hand it off to Alex right now. Appreciate you joining today, Alex, and go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, team. Thanks again, the Brevity team, for giving me the opportunity. For those of you who I haven't met before, again, Alex Chrisman. I've been on both sides of the fence, of carrying the bag, sales leader, but also leading, a team here at BillTrust. And so really with my intention and is to help build and develop, high performance sales teams, but also sales professionals. So one of the biggest things, again, from my perspective, one of the biggest things that I've learned over the last decade in coaching and being on both sides is starts with mindset. Brian just kind of talked about that, but also from a leader starts with trust. I always say this thing: we buy and sell at the speed of trust. Okay, think about that for a second. We buy and sell at the speed of trust. If you don't have that, really, in my opinion, you don't have consistency, you don't have growth, you become very closed off, and you definitely don't have a high performing team. Okay, so this goes to, in my opinion, how we can build high performance culture. And then Brian kind of touched on this about the fear side of things. There's the leader you trust, but then also the leadership and fear mentality. And so I jokingly said, I said to Brian, I said, think about this, Brian. If I told you right before we started, which I kind of jokingly did, if I told you that microphone that you had right next to you has been recalled and was going to catch fire, okay? What is his thoughts? Well, is it on the podcast and the conversation we're going to have, or is it about protecting himself and being safe? It's probably going to pull him in the way of fear pulls the focus away of what our attention should be devoted to, right? And in sales, if a rep or our team is afraid of being wrong, we know as leaders, they aren't going to speak up. They aren't going to take risks. They're not going to ask questions. And they definitely won't provide feedback to us as leaders when we probably need it the most. Okay? So that's why, in my opinion, trust is one of those foundational elements with building culture or with building a high performance culture, whether it be in sales or whether it be just in the profession that you're in, right? Like going back to we buy and sell at the speed of trust. So again, that's where the culture is where open judgment and everything changes. So we touched on a little bit the mindset over knowledge, Brian and Dustin did. So I'll kind of make a transition to that because, speaking to this specific topic. I worked with reps who don't have the product knowledge that maybe we had hoped that I trained them on or coached them on. Maybe it was just lacking. But one of the things that I always found that the successful reps have, they show up each and every day wanting to learn. They take open feedback, and what they end up doing is executing at a very high level because they're willing to be coachable. They trust our opinion to be coached, and they're wanting to figure things out. They continue to invest in us. And I say that as much as I'm willing to invest in them. And that's what builds culture, and that's what builds high performance teams. And so it's really that growth mindset, and you don't have to be perfect. I'm going to use a little story here because Brian kind of used one is about having reps be one of the poll questions. And it was the least answered poll question, which I was a little surprised about, but it was they think they know it all. I use this analogy when I do my training is, hey, let's just say we had to scale a mountain, right? And you're the new hire coming in, or you're the person coming into this new business, and you're at the bottom. And one, maybe a 3 to 5 year experienced rep comes over and says, hey, Brian, I can help you get to the top. And the rep goes, I've done this before. I've been successful in my own business. I got a plan. I'm going to figure it out on my own. He goes, well, here's my business card. Think about it. Okay. Another rep comes up and says, hey, I'm willing to help you. I'm willing to invest in your career. I got a helicopter. I can get you up there in 10 minutes. Rep goes, nah, I've been successful. I can do it on my own. I'm going to get up the mountain myself. I'm going to take this playbook that's helped me be successful. Halfway up the mountain, what do you think happens? He's stuck. He's looking around, thinking, is there help? And normally what happens is the regression before the progression. As they come back, they say, hey, I might need a level set, or they start asking. So really, it's about being open. It's about wanting to be able to learn, and wanting to really rely on your peers and supporting yourself. Dustin, I know you were going to show the slide about Kobe Bryant that I had. So kind of building on the mindset approach to things. There's this, I work with a performance coach, and I always say great coaches need great coaches, right? Like, I'm going to be the first to put up and say, like, I don't know everything. I need to learn from peers, whether it be Brian and listening to podcasts that he speaks about, whether it be Kelvin, who's somebody I've had an opportunity to learn from as well. But there's a clip from Kobe Bryant, and he was asked the question, do you love to win or hate to lose? Do you love to win or hate to lose? And I play collegiate football. I'm a very competitive fitness person. I was like, man, I hate to lose because I feel like I should be prepared each and every time. My performance coach says, okay, think about this for a second and go watch this clip. So I went and watched the clip, and I suggest everybody to go watch it because it gives you a new perspective on this. But Kobe Bryant says, I don't play to win. I don't play to lose. I play to figure things out and get better. He says, I don't play to win. I don't play to lose. I play to figure things out and get better. And that's really what it comes to when it comes to mindset, right? Is if you're focused on the outcome, which we're all in the sales performance business, right? Or a lot of the people on this call is a lot of people get so fixated on the outcome that you don't love the process. I tell reps each and every day, love the process, love the process. And if you love the process and you try to figure things out, thanks for that clip somebody shared. But if you love the process and you're willing to learn, that's where consistency, and you can control the things you can control, which is attitude and effort each and every day. That's how we get better. Okay. And so there's also the side of things that I'll touch on, which is the limiting beliefs. As sales reps, we have these things that, as professionals, we have these limiting beliefs that creep into our mind. I'm going to give you all a statistic that I share with a lot of people is 80% of our thoughts from the National Science Foundation, it's a research study, 80% of our thoughts are negative. Okay. So our natural human side of things is immediately fall to the negative side. So let me give you an example. As something goes wrong, you have a bad call, similar to what we were going to be talking about, lost deals a little bit here and later. I had a bad call. I'd have lost the deal. Your brain doesn't naturally think, you know what, how do I bounce back from this? What do I need to do better? It usually says, I'm no good at this. I joined the wrong company. The training's not good. My quota is too high. My territory's bad. My ADR is not good enough. All of those things creep into our mind, right? So in belief, I always talk about, if it sits too long, it becomes a pattern. Right? If you speak about it and you talk about it, it becomes a pattern. Again, I'm a sports guy. Another person that I've read a lot into and watched is Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, obviously a great athlete, great professional, but he's got a business with his brother around neutral mindset. It's called limitless minds or mindset. So he talks about as a quarterback, fourth quarter, right? I'm down 20 some points. A lot of people start thinking I can't do this. We're behind by too much, right? And his approach is, and he's worked with a mindset coach for many years. His is, what can I do on the next play? What can I put myself? And I always say forward is a pace, right? What can I do next to get better each and every day? Rather than I blew this call. It's, hey, how do I reframe this? Is I blew the call, but how do I have more control on the next one? How do I not blow it on the next one? Or with Brevity specifically, I'm working with our team is, hey, the opener might not have been good, but how do I get better on the next one? Right? Like, this deal is dead. Well, what can I learn from it? Right? I tell reps to kind of look at three things. What worked? What didn't work? And what is one thing I can control or one thing that I would change different going into the next call? So I got two last pieces, then I'll turn it back over to Dustin. But we got a lot of leaders on here, and leadership without ego. I always talk about putting your ego at the, leaving the ego at the door. So I talked about growth mindset at the beginning, but I've worked with a lot of leaders and a lot of, leaders, good ones, bad ones, somewhere in between. And this isn't about, all of this isn't just about reps, right? Us as leaders, you have to be vulnerable and you have to show up in a way that you put your own ego aside. So when, again, I touched on trust, right? So when you go and ask for feedback from your team, you don't take it defensively. You take it with an open approach and say, hey, how can I get better? But also don't pass blame that says, you know what? I messed up, Brian. I'm here to learn. I can't do everything, correct every single time, but here's where I want to get better for you as a leader and a teammate. And that's where it builds trust. And I'm going to give y'all one DVD bonus here. I know Kelvin's talking about his book, so I'm going to leave you with a DVD bonus for some of y'all. And it goes, you probably weren't expecting this word, but I'm going to use the word gratitude. Okay? So, gratitude, in my opinion, it's a performance tool. So there was an article written back in Forbes a couple years back that stated thanked employees are half as likely to be job hunting. And they're 2 times more likely to be engaged and 3 times more likely to find meaning in their work. I'll say those stats back to you. Again, thanked employees are half as likely to be job hunting, 2 times more likely to be engaged, and 3 times more likely to be engaged in their work. So if you're not thanking your team, you're not thanking your significant others, maybe your kids, right? Like I got 2 young kids. This morning, I was getting them ready for school. I was like, hey, we got to turn off the TV. I got a lot of work to do. You know what I did? Again, a lot of this is not my natural, it's practice, right? A lot of this is practice. And doing it each and every day and believing in what you do is, hey, thanks for turning off the TV. It's a simple thing. And he's like, you know what? You're welcome. That makes us feel good as parents and professionals, but it also shows meaning to our kids or our colleagues. So again, thanks again for the opportunity. If there's questions, Dustin, team, I appreciate it. Hopefully, if y'all want to reach out to me about more than happy to answer questions along the way.
Appreciate it, Alex. Yeah, stay on for sure. We'll have some more questions trickle in. Looks like we did get one question for Brian. And Brian, maybe you can share anything that stood out from Alex. But Josh asked, Brian, how would you approach teaching a sales team the skill of building know, like, and trust in your relationships? That was just a question we had from Josh Summers that came in the last 10 minutes. So I don't know if you want to share anything on that, and then just relate back to what Alex talked about, if anything stood out to you.
Yeah, I think Alex made a couple of good points that this is about leadership. Reps aren't going to figure this out. So, and then you go to Colby's quote, he's not focused on outcome. And this is not about outcome. This drives outcome. Performance drives outcome, not just activity. And in sales, a lot of times the outcome, even when we perform well, doesn't go well. That doesn't mean we did poorly. So we have to be able to separate the performance from the performer. This is the leadership thing that we have to get. And during the interview process, we have to look for this. Can these people separate the performance from their identity, which taking feedback, right? Do they take the feedback as I'm bad, or do they take the feedback as what I did wasn't that good and could become better? Does he hate me, or does he not just happy with what I did? If you go to any great restaurant, the chef takes the feedback. They're looking for it. They want it because everyone else is, oh, it's delicious, it's fantastic. They want to hear the person who doesn't like it. And to answer the question about know, like, and trust, I've got a whole course on it. It's more than a soundbite on a blurb. The key thing is it's not about you. It's about them. If you can show interest in somebody else and pull that out of them and demonstrate it to them, that's what builds it. Nobody wants to hear about you, your product, and your company. We all get commercials all day long. And now we've got AI that can do it 100 times faster. Is it working more effectively? Cost-wise, maybe, but not outcome-wise. So if you want your reps to really learn how to become known, liked, and trusted, they have to learn how to connect with a stranger. If you go up to a stranger talking about yourself, you're a beggar. If you go up to a stranger and you help them, you're a friend. You're someone they want to talk to. You find commonality, common interests.
Appreciate that, Brian. And totally agree on that. You got to make it about them, not about you. It sounds very simple, but we're trained in sales, especially the last couple of decades, to make it all about our pitch and value prop and features and benefits. But that's just not getting through anymore. So you have to be creative. Marissa, either for you or Alex, and then we'll transition to the next part, which is on the closed loss report. She said acquisitions can bring uncertainty and concern with the team around morale and keeping them motivated when there's acquisitions or different things coming on with your sales team. I don't know if either of you have experience of what you might recommend when there's M&A going on and you have a lot of changes with the structure of the company.
I've lived through a lot of them. All that matters is what you sell. Keep people focused on selling what they have control over. What happens a month from now, worrying about it. Worrying is not a good use of activity. People call it thinking. It's just worrying. So keep it focused on the things you do have control over.
Yeah, and I would agree, and I would say again from additional perspective is again invest in your people, be transparent, right? Like going back to trust and mindset, right? Is as a leader, if you can just go hip to hip with them and just be transparent of they're going to trust you, right? That's culture is the people that we surround ourselves with, and it's one of those things as a leader, if you're going to get in there with the trenches with them, be vulnerable, as I mentioned, but also give them transparency and clarity into those things. So that'd be the additional piece that I would add, Dustin.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Well, we're going to pivot to the next part of our webinar today, which is around the closed loss report and how do we be more accountable there. But I just want to give a shout out to the audience. We got a little over 80 folks that are still on board and that stayed pretty consistent. So thank you all for participating. Again, put your questions in the chat in the Q&A. We're going to have that link for Kelvin's book here in a little bit. So keep staying on for that. And then Brad, let's go ahead and put up that next poll around this closed loss report. So go ahead and pop that up. And the question is going to be, what are the top reasons your deals are stalling in your close loss report or your pipeline? So option A, ghosting. Option B, no decision. Option C, losing to a competitor. And then D is you didn't do enough discovery or was just an unqualified lead.
There's no, they lied to me.
That's where you come in, Brian. It's pretty consistent. It's very even so far, but it looks like ghosting's gonna be the winner, which makes sense. No decision, number two. Unqualified lead, hanging on to number three, and then losing to a competitor at number four. But pretty consistent across the board on that one. But I mean, Brian, that's really our next transition is talking about the close loss reasons. What's real and what's not being said maybe by your team. What do you think about that? Or do you think the leaders are getting the real reasons, or they have to figure it out themselves, talking with the reps?
Oh, you know, everyone's protecting themselves, subconsciously at least, right? We're going with instincts here. If you say ghosting, that people think they have no control over that. There's ways of preventing it. But if you say that, then you say, they ghosted me. Or no decision. Well, no decision is a decision, right? It's no. It's no until it's yes. There's no maybes in sales, and that yes is a lot further than you think it is. And you got to dig into that. And this is where leadership becomes critical is don't start with this. Have your reps walk you through the deal. How'd the first call go? How'd the second call go? Who else is involved? Why would they do this now? What do they see as their alternatives? What does the economic buyer think of it? Who do you feel is the economic buyer? And everybody thinks it's the first line manager. But most first line managers can't spend any more than 5K without it going higher. This is how you build performance. You've got to take your sales process and break it into atomic parts because you can't judge the whole process. It's like judging the whole game of basketball. Hey, Kobe, we lost because you stepped over the line here. And it's like, no, that's not why you lost. It was a bunch of things. But if you want to find out why you missed the shot, you can kind of analyze that. You weren't in the right place. You did it at the last minute. You did it out of desperation, not out of opportunity. This is how you build performance. Every coach in every performance, what do? They don't take the whole scene. They break it down into tiny pieces, boring, monotonous little pieces that allow people to find the little distinctions, take feedback, apply the feedback, and do it again. And until you do that, it becomes kind of like opinion. And it's so subjective, it's very easy to say, my manager doesn't get it. Because we should do a poll. How many of you heard this when you ask a rep? Did you do this? Oh, I did that. When I was a sales leader, all I heard was, I did that, Brian. I did it. Well, I know they did something or something like that. I didn't ask did you send an email to the CEO? I wanted to know, have you talked to the CEO? Do they care about this? Where is it on their priority list? What's the board going to think about this? Does it increase his competitiveness? How long's the CEO been there? That's what I'm really looking for. But as leaders, we don't want to have that preamble. We want to know, did you do this? And every rep says, I did that. And then they say, I did it perfectly. And I'm like, how can you do something that's subjective perfectly? You can't. So when they say that, what they're doing is kind of relinquishing responsibility. And that is the opposite of a performance culture. The performance culture, you're trying to do a post-mortem on a particular deal or a meeting, and it's open and honest and forthcoming. And people can take feedback without it hurting them personally. And then they come up with a strategy and a prevention strategy so it doesn't happen again.
Love it, Kelvin. I wanted to add you in here too, because obviously you just launched that book, which talks about a lot of this, but also you were founder-led sales for a long time as well. I know you got a big team now, which is awesome, but I'm sure you had to learn some of these painful lessons at times and be very accountable doing the founder-led sales. But anything you would add or relatable that Brian just touched on?
Yeah, without a question. When we first launched Brevity AI role play software, right? A lot of how I practiced at first was like a scrimmage. I tried to do too much too fast. Where we see the biggest impact is actually focusing it on these micro moments. There's 13 traps that we feel in this book that for those that stay at the end have an opportunity to get a signed copy, where whether that's price to value, whether that's the infamous commodity trap, whether that's the infamous single threadedness trap, and even just thinking with single threadedness, Kelvin, this is a shoe in. You don't, just go through me. You don't need to, talk to anybody else at this company. This is within my budget domain where we know typically we need to get heads of enablement like Alex bought in. We need to get the VP of sales bought in. We need to also sometimes get power potential individual contributors bought in when we're trying to sell our own technology. So really isolating that conversation skill or drill was super meaningful. And one of the big things that I learned from my dad is when you point the finger at someone else, there's 3 pointing right back at you. So one of the big things that we've done is really transform our whole close loss process to where it's instead of blaming either the company, instead of blaming your company for not having a feature, blaming the competitor for dropping their price, or blaming the prospect for it not being the right time, we're taking back that ownership. Dustin, when you had those 6 symptoms outlined on the slide, what we've done in our close loss reporting is create a drop down to create more self accountability of what could the rep have done better, and then what trap could we have done a better job of preventing or overcoming. So now we have more precision of which micro moment our teams need to practice more. So I'm still learning a lot, but a lot of areas where and symptoms that I fell into that kind of horror stories, but take those moments where someone said, "Hey, Kelvin, I love this. I'm going to head up to Minnesota to get to present this to my leadership team," and me not asking that clarifying question. Well, who's even going to? When you say leadership, are you referring to insert name that you found on LinkedIn? Who's the CRO? But making sure we're at least being proactive when we run into these these traps, and making sure we're breaking it down into bite-sized chunks.
No doubt. Yeah, I totally agree with you and Brian. It's easy to get overwhelmed with the entire sales process, and there's good things that you need to do to map all that out, but it usually comes down to these 1 or 2 moments where it goes off the rails, and it's something as simple as sending a proposal too early via email the second they ask for it, but you really haven't justified the ROI. You're not even negotiating with the right person. Now they have everything they need and your costs, which is even worse, on a piece of paper, and you probably are never going to hear back from them in most situations. So it's how do you dissect that and what Brian was talking about and figure out where that's happening, get the rep to be on board with admitting to it, and then fix that one issue. And that's probably going to help you close several deals a quarter if you fix that one issue. So but we want to get into this entire curriculum or all these different things, but it's just that one moment and focusing there, which is key. And Brian and Alex, we got a couple questions that have came in around this or other stuff. So I want to make sure we answer the audience a little bit. And then if you have anything else you want to add on what we just touched on, and then we're going to transition to the last part for about 10 minutes and do Q&A at the end. So, um, Brian, this one might be one for you. Emily was asking more, how do you evaluate how well the customer meeting went, to determine, what went well, what didn't? So maybe it's not as bigger stakes as like a deal not closing. It's just like one meeting throughout the process. Do you have any ways you recommend that for Emily?
Yeah, I mean, if it's recorded, you can go through the recording with them or by yourself. Look for key things. What was the outcome? Did they get the next meeting calendared or just verbally agreed to? How did they open the call? Were they able to keep the call focused on the problem, or do they revert to the product? And this is where, as leaders, we really mess up, is we focus exclusively on product knowledge. So guess what our reps do? They share product knowledge. At the right time in the right way, it's good, especially when you're highly competitive deals. And then I'm sure they got the price question. Were they able to take the price question and convert it into a value conversation? Were they able to understand where this person fits in the organization and in the decision path? And who else in the company cares about this particular decision? And what's their motive? And where is it on their priority list? Versus you go through most calls, and what it is they've been very polite service clerks. They've been answering all the questions right, including sending proposals to somebody who has no authority and is now in charge of that deal. And the call review is the great time to discuss the performance of the process and how well the person executed on it. But the key is to make it about the performance, not the person.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Brian. And then Brad, go ahead and put the demo link into the chat. So basically, if you've enjoyed what we've been talking about throughout today, some of the things resonated with you, and you have a sales team that are grappling with some of these same challenges, and you want to learn more about Brevity and what we're all about, we'll do a personalized demo for you guys, no strings attached, and we'll get a signed copy of Kelvin's book sent to you as well. So we can only do that for the first 10. So make sure to do that. That link should be in there shortly. And then we'll continue on throughout the presentation. We've got about 10 minutes left around some mindset related topics, and then we'll leave time at the end for Q&A with the rest of the group. All right, so I am biased because I am a University of Georgia fan. I know we've talked a lot about sports today, but I had one thing I wanted to share real fast because it is pretty relevant to what we're talking about. First off, who do you think is going to win the national championship this year in college football? Season's starting in about a week or two, so I want to know from the chat if we got any big college football fans who you think is going to win, and who you see on the slide right there is Herschel Walker, who won the Heisman at Georgia. He also is a very famous running back, college and NFL. But the reason I put him on here is because he's very infamous for his workout routine. But it wasn't some crazy weightlifting, all these trainers, all these different stuff. It was super simple. Obviously, he had some very natural talent, but his physique, speed, all that came from literally doing close to 3,500 push-ups every day, 1,500 sit-ups every day, hundreds of pull-ups and sprints daily, starting from childhood. So sometimes, as we were talking about, we try to create all these different tools, all these different processes, all these additional things when we just need to keep it simple and double down on the simple things that get us to where we want to go, and really mastering your craft and being a student of the game. So a little biased with the UGA, but I had to share the Herschel Walker story because it's very relevant to what we're talking about today. He's still in really good shape too, if you ever check out any of that. And then look, hey, we talked about know-it-all. Alex, you brought that up, so I definitely want to bring you back in here in a second. I can tell you personally, I still struggle with this, that know-it-all mentality. Being in sales and having some success in the past, it's a constant thing that I have to remind myself. I got humbled a couple times changing industries. That definitely will knock the know-it-all out of you, but you have to continuously believe this because it creeps up on us, especially as sales leaders or salespeople, because we have done good things in the past, probably made good money, whatever the case. So I constantly try to be more of a learn-it-all and not a know-it-all. And if you actually look at Microsoft, Satya, their CEO, he was inspired by a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck, and Microsoft was crushing it in the 90s and 2000s, taking over the world, and it was natural. They had a lot of people doing well. They had people that came from big time schools, and they just got a little complacent and thought they knew everything, and they weren't learning as much. They weren't branching out. And he had a great quote when he was instilling this new culture, that a person with less that has a learn it all approach will do way better than a person with a ton that has a know it all mentality. And it wasn't just Microsoft, Nike, Adobe, a lot of big time companies have implemented this type of culture. And it not only helped the top line from revenue, but it also helps the bottom line from a profitability standpoint. So that time when you think you don't need to learn anything new is usually where something bad might happen. And there's always someone out there that has done better or made more money, closed more deals. So how do you instill this type of approach, this learn it all approach with your team? But Alex, you mentioned this earlier. Do you have any thoughts on this as I was going through that slide in particular?
Yeah, I haven't read the book, so it's definitely one of the reads that I'll put on the list. But along with Kelvin's new one, by the way. Kelvin, when I get in the mail, I'll be ready. But no, it's interesting because you like I said, culture is the people that you surround yourself with, right? And as leaders, if you have to lead by example and lead from the front, right? And if you're the first to say like, hey, I don't have all the answers, I want to learn from people I surround myself with, your team will follow, right? Like, hey, I don't know everything. I'm still learning. I'm 10 months into my new company, right? I don't know everything, and I'm leading a team. I got to go out there and learn it. So going back to your point is, if I'm a everyday learner and I try to put time and designate time each and every day to learn something about my business, but also about business acumen or whatever it might be, that's the approach that the rest of your team will follow. So
No doubt. And then Brian, this is one of my favorite questions to ask you, but how many times have you had a sales rep or a leader say that they've been doing it for 20 years and they don't need to learn anything else? Does that come up ever for you?
Yeah, it's the natural thing. It's our instinct saying, I'm cool. I've been through this enough. I've seen it all, done it all. But the problem, now look at sales. How can you learn everything? It's ridiculous. It involves psychology, organizational dynamics, your business, your product, your competitor's product, the internal workings and politics. And you know about less than 5% of what would be everything in your deals. And if you take the I know it all approach, you're just letting yourself off the hook, meaning I have no responsibility because I know it all. Can't be me. It's got to be the territory, the product, the client, politics. Remember, everyone used to say that within it became political within the account. It's always political within the account. It's people. That's what politics is people trying to work together. And I think the know-it-all thing, it's the Dunning-Kruger effect that causes the B player trap in sales. And people usually get it 3 to 5 years into their career. Most never get out of it because it's so comfortable. They've got a little platitude for every situation. The problem is it doesn't perform very well.
And just to remind everyone, friendly reminder that the most common sales process out there, no matter what the industry is winging it, and that's partly because of what we're talking about right here. But for whatever reason, sales over the years has gotten into that rut where there's no annual training, any of that type of stuff, and people are just winging it based off their experience, based off what we just talked about. So we know that we should be doing some of this, but we fight it, and it's just a natural thing, as Brian was talking about there. So all right, we got about 10 minutes left. I want to make sure we answer the chat and see what else we haven't gotten to yet. And then now's your chance to ask Brian, Alex, or any of us from the team any questions that you had throughout this around sales, mindset, performance. So put that into the chat or the Q&A. And then Brad, go ahead and drop that demo link one more time for the first 10 so that we can make sure we get those people Kelvin's book and get them set up. So let's see if we missed any ones here. Yeah, we had Lawrence who said he's got a long sales cycle. Wow, 3 years and 9 months. That was the biggest deal he had been working on, and many lessons learned along the way. Most important lesson is that the strategy is only successful when you make the connection and build trust. So even throughout that 3 to 4 year process, he had to continuously build trust to make that happen. And yeah, that's tough, Brian. What do you think on that? With these people that have longer sales cycles, like it's just so easy to lose momentum. And how do you keep that performance mentality for years? I mean, that's not easy, right? Because you want that instant gratification.
The key is to focus on talking about the product. No, it's not the focus.
I was like, wait, what?
Right. Because, I had deals, when I first got into sales were, what would be today million and a half, and they were over a year long. They involved a government agency, a contractor, and an end customer somewhere. And everybody had a different view, and only the user buyers really knew what we did. Everybody else, it was going off of reputation, case studies, and the importance is, and I think the person mentioned it, is having conversations with all these players over this long period of time. That's not about the product. It's about what they're trying to achieve, what they're up against, how they ended up in that particular position, how they personally win by making this decision, and understanding how the decision goes. So 90% of the talk is not about the product. And a lot of it's not even about the problem, because the problem is different for each person. It's getting to know these people and what they're trying to achieve. Because how many demos can you give? And how many of us, we get the meeting with the economic buyer, and the first thing we do is want to show them a demo. And the person who's seeing it doesn't know what they're looking at. It's not about the product. And until you're able to understand this, you're basically being reactive. How do you be proactive over a multi-month, quarter, year process? It has to be conversations about what they want to talk about.
Looking at some other questions in here. This one's a little more technical, but like when you have these processes, Brian, it's easy to lose momentum if you don't have a next step on the calendar. So do you think you should have a cadence with certain people or like the entire group, or what do you think on that broadly?
Uh, you should have a cadence. It doesn't have to be every week, doesn't have to be every other week. It can be every third week or every fourth week. It's got to be something that's in it for that person. It should be one-on-one. It should not be one to many. If it's one to many, you don't get the truth, you don't get openness, you end up getting the company line, which is usually not the truth. And if you can sell that, and that's critical because when we don't have the meeting calendared, what ends up happening? We spend 2 or 3 weeks trying to get it on the calendar, which is 10 times as much work. And that is one of Calvin's traps, is that we hear what we want to hear, but then when it comes to them actually showing up, they don't show up. It's not on the calendar. They say, just call me anytime. Yeah, it'd be great if you picked up, but that's not how people work. And if it's important, they'll put it on the calendar and it becomes a great litmus test to determine how serious they are. Because if they're not going to meet you for 15 minutes once a month, they're not going to buy anything.
That's a classic one right there. We got to quote that. If they're not going to meet with you for 15 minutes once a month, they're not going to buy anything. It's so true.
How serious can they be?
Yeah. Or the timing's off, right? It needs to be later. You don't prioritize it as much, but yes, for sure. 100%. Um, Kelvin, Alex, what else did you see in the chat maybe that I missed as I was talking there? Was there anything else you wanted to touch on from a question from the group standpoint while I try to find some more?
I love Brian's bar around emotional commissions. I'm guilty of this myself. I would love for you to elaborate and add a little bit more color on this emotional commission. That hit me hard today.
Yeah, because when we lose a deal, what do we say? Do we make a list of all the things we did wrong? No, of course not. That's painful. What do we come up with why it wasn't our fault? That's emotional commission. We didn't get financial commission by closing the deal, so we have to augment it and make ourselves feel better. It has the identical feeling as financial commission without the money. And I used to have reps who would tell me this. It was like political, they're going to do it after this. They've got something else more important that we only found out on the last day of the quarter. That didn't exist for the last 3 months that we've been talking to them. And I go, why don't we face it? Why don't we put it on the whiteboard and see if we could maybe prevent it or fix it next quarter? I understand you're only human. We all make mistakes. We all hear and see and feel what we want to, not what's real. And as salespeople and as sales leaders, it's our job to kind of turn the happy ears off, play devil's advocate sometime, and you'd be surprised how they react. You can almost tell how they react to see how the customers, what they're really doing. So emotional commission feels good, but it creates a false belief because now you believe it was political. You believe that they misled you. No, you weren't doing your job. You didn't go enough depth. You didn't have the relationship that you needed with them. You didn't ask the hard questions. You believed them when they said, I'll get it done. How many of us heard, I'm the decision maker, whatever I want, the company does? I only heard that, what, 80, 90% of the time when I sold? I always sold to, technical people who had zero budget authority. And it was like, oh, you just need to talk to me. Don't go anywhere else. They do whatever I want. And they never did it.
And then follow up to that from a sales leader and seller perspective, I feel like judgment and discernment is one of the biggest things that are overlooked. What's your recommendation in terms of post-mortem? How frequent from a sales leader seller perspective? And what are those key elements when you're doing a post-mortem so we can start to close deals bigger, faster, and smarter?
Yeah, do it not after it's dead in the mortem part. Do it kind of before it dies.
Mm.
And as a sales leader, when you see a deal that's 2 or 3 times size and it's a sure thing, no problem, that's what you need a mortem on. You need to be like, well, what makes you think that? Who are you talking to? Why are they doing it now versus next quarter? What else are they looking at? And what you end up finding is, well, it's all us. This one person loves us. And then the end of the quarter comes, oh, they're not calling me, or they left, or they got a new role. It's just natural that we want big deals. We want big deals fast. When things seem unnatural and too good, it's usually not that good. And the time to face it is now when you can do something about it versus after the end of the quarter where everyone's pointing fingers at each other and blaming each other.
Pre-mortem.
There's one more good question I wanted to ask, but just to wrap up here for everyone that stayed on till the end, we appreciate you guys and thanks for interacting in the chat. It's been a great hour today, but just to recap what we talked about, we went over how mindset is greater than knowledge, and that's really that performance is going to help you crush your quota with your team. Accountability is key with the close loss report or well before the close loss report, as Brian just mentioned. And then how do you manage that sales roller coaster and try to be more of that learn it all mentality? And then you got access to Kelvin's book. We put that in the link there, so hopefully we had some folks sign up for it. And last question I saw either for Alex or Brian, because I like this one. I think Jay was saying he understands some of this and the mentality that you need to have to be successful with your team. But what if your CEO or people you have to manage up don't have the same viewpoint around performance versus activities? How do you try to manage up with that situation, which could be hard? Alex, you got any thoughts on that? Or Brian, you want to start?
Yeah, Brian, you want to start and I'll add on? I feel like you're chomping at this one.
Well, I've heard it all the time because, I'd either get pulled in by a VP of sales or a CEO. And the CEO, especially ones who have never sold, typically come out of engineering and I'd always revert. I go, why aren't the engineers compensated on keystrokes? And they go, you're fool. What do you mean? That would be stupid. Then why are we focusing salespeople on activity? right? Because if you do it on engineering, you get a lot of crappy code. And if you do it on salespeople, you get a very full CRM full of crap because it's a performance profession. And this is what we've been doing for 20 years. The CRM came out, and then this predictable revenue. It's predictable if it's 2004 and you work at Salesforce. Other than that, it's pretty predictably bad. What we have to do as we're leaders, okay? We're not just here to do what the CEO says. We're here to educate the CEO and sell internally to help the CEO understand, do you want revenue to go up or do you want it to go down? Activity moves it down, performance moves it up. You choose.
Anything to add, Alex? So that
I
he
mean,
summed it up
I
pretty
would say
well.
hit it pretty. I would say again, the other thing is just as a leader, right? Is you know the pressures of what's coming. You know when the CEO or the owner reaches out to you, but there's the I say the conviction and the confidence behind you being the leader that supports your team, right? Like you got to speak up for them that at the end of the day, we're here to drive results, but um you got to practice what you preach as a leader too. So it's a tough conversation, no doubt about it, but it's sometimes you got to dig your if you have conviction behind it as a leader, you gotta just have that tough conversation with the CEO.
And just remember, which is easier to fake? You can't fake revenue. You can fake activity.
Yep,
You
agreed.
choose.
And ultimately, as a leader or a rep, I mean, it's your butt that's on the line downstream. So if you're going to have the tough conversation, you might as well have it earlier than later because you're going to get blamed for it eventually. So you need to be passionate, as Alex was saying. But hey, we appreciate you guys. We do this once a month, so make sure to sign up for the monthly revenue series with this webinar. Look forward to seeing you next month. We always have a topic very similar to this that's very interesting to you guys. And we will see you on LinkedIn soon. Thank you.